One more Cars movie to review till Cars on the Road drops this fall. The movie being Planes, Fire, and Rescue? Because I guess Dusty realized he was so trash at racing that he decided to switch up his career. In all seriousness, this movie shares a lot of similarities to Planes 1, specifically with Dusty's journey into discovering and learning a new profession, whether it be firefighting or racing. But what I wasn't expecting at all is for this movie to somehow, almost as if the filmmakers had learned from their missteps from Planes 1, completely fix every issue I had with Planes 1 and apply that logic to Planes 2. I know, it sounds crazy, but it genuinely happened. For starters, this movie doesn't feel nearly as cliche or to the book as Planes 1 did. Sure, it has its fair share of really unfunny and stupid jokes, and it wasn't completely immune to pretentiousness. I mean, this movie literally starts with a dedication to firefighters, which really gives you the impression that this movie is gonna be more serious than it actually is. Like, bro, this is the same movie that's got car-themed dirty jokes in it. This movie ain't serious.
We wore off the treads on our honeymoon. Driving.
But Dusty's motivation to be a firefighter is a lot more fleshed out than, let me prove to you I was born for more. No, it actually has some heart to it. Feeling as if Dusty had unintentionally caused this old firefighter to lose his license, Dusty decides that he wants to take his place. And it makes sense considering this was after he realized his racing career might be coming to a pause since his gearbox is all messed up. I also think it's really cool that this movie explores airborne firefighting as opposed to airborne racing, because like I mentioned in my Planes 1 review, it's really dumb to make a movie about cars racing than a spin-off where it's just planes racing. It gives the universe some plot and aesthetic variety, as long as you can forget about that Mater's Tall Tales short where he becomes a firefighter. Dusty begins this movie with a flight where he gives a little too much torque and ends up screwing up his gearbox beyond repair. Basically, he is not able to fly with more than 50 torque or he dies or something. Oh, and his gearbox is apparently discontinued. Well, like they really discontinued this life-saving piece of bodily equipment for Dusty, which I can only assume to be the equivalent of like if they discontinued a life-saving medication or something. So Dusty's got to slow down a bit, which is convenient because he just received a new calling to be a firefighter after he accidentally caused a bad accident. Dusty begins his training at the all-new Disney National Park, where Bob Chapek himself runs the Galactic Star Cruiser, trying to convince people that there is nothing to fear and they can surrender their money to him. The movie follows a very similar road to its predecessor. Dusty is an amateur at doing something, whether it be firefighting or racing, and recruits an old master in their craft to train him. Yet something, whether it be a fear of heights or a faulty gearbox, is holding Dusty back from his true potential. Multiple times he disobeys the orders of his trainer because of this thing that is holding him back. But in the end, Dusty learns to let go of what's holding him back in a desperate moment so that he can achieve greatness. In my Planes video, I talked in detail about how Dusty refusing to fly high for a majority of the movie burdened its message with insincerity. But what happens with Dusty refusing to push the limits of his gearbox in this movie is actually justifiable and makes for such a better version of what they tried and failed to do in Planes 1. Multiple times, Dusty is required to put some torque on his engine while firefighting, but since he knows that this would completely destroy his engine, he rightfully refuses to do so. Why he didn't tell Blade, his mentor, about this earlier is kinda dumb on his part and probably only didn't happen for the sake of convenience, but whatever, I'll let it slide. Unlike the first movie, Dusty is not rewarded for not pushing his torque up. Because of it, he fails to please his tough trainer, falls down a waterfall, and gets trapped in an old wooden hut, basically almost dying from the flames. Again, compare this to the first movie, where disobeying Skipper's order to fly higher caused absolutely nothing bad for him to happen. He was able to gather a large fan base and literally win one of the races by taking a shortcut because of it. And Dusty disobeying Skipper from the start isn't justified because he's simply only disobeying him because of his fear of heights rather than something a little more rational like, hey, my engine is literally gonna shut down if I go any faster. I will literally die. It makes perfect sense that he disobeyed Blade, and because of it, he's having to deal with legitimate consequences that hurt not only Blade, but himself. And it makes perfect sense that Blade is upset at him, not only because of what it ends up causing, but because he's kind of right when he says that in order to do the job of firefighting, you need to take the risk of putting everything you have on the line to save lives. And because of the consequences that he and Blade had to face because of his actions, Dusty learns from it and pushes his torque up to the max in order to save the lives of these two RVs. He learns this because he doesn't want his lack of action to cause the death of these people like it almost did for Blade. And look, I'm not saying all this to say that this is some incredible arc that's never been done before in cinema, but compared to the first movie, it's just such a better way of pulling this arc off. I highly doubt that this is due to John Lasseter learning his lesson from the first Plane movie after the negative feedback, because one, this movie released a year after the first, and two, Lasseter isn't even credited as a story artist on this movie. I think we have identified the problem. But taking this this movie away from the first, it still isn't all that bad. It's definitely burdened by some really cheesy jokes, mostly at the beginning, but it's pretty enjoyable and sends a message that is actually received by the viewer. Alright, it is finally time to rank the Cars universe movies. The tier list starts at B because none of these movies are truly A tier and beyond. We got the OG Cars at the top, followed by this movie, Planes 2, then Planes 1, Cars 3, and then at the very bottom we have the movie No One Shall Speak Of, conveniently in its own customized tier. If Pixar ever so dares to make a Cars 4 or like a Fillmore spin-off film, I'll have to customize this tier list, but for now it's probably gonna stay like this for a bit. Thank you all for watching this video. Please check out my other content and subscribe for more of it. I'll see ya in Piston Peak National Park.